This is what is good in realism. It's big. It is big. And the lines will be nothing to you unless it's revealed through his appetite to make it big. This is what I consider an actor that plays in a modern play. The understanding that the text is big and that the actor is little and has to measure up to the size of realism.
Okay, if an actor came in dressed as you are dressed, he would be asked to leave the theater and not come back, because I don't see that you would dare wear anything like that. It belongs to you. It's your own, isn't it?
No, it's not.
You borrowed it.
I stole it.
Now, you mustn't put anything on your body which doesn't feed the play and which doesn't feed your soul, because you're not acting words. You are not acting words. That is not part of the tradition in which this playwright wrote a play. You cannot dress that way. You cannot use a bottle that way. You cannot use candles that way. And I don't want to be subjected to it. Do you understand? I can't get anywhere with you in the park.
I apologize for not.
I accept your apology, knowing that it will help you and that you will do a lot to change it. You did the Chekhov and you have the talent. What you don't have is a sense, which Americans don't have, of the style. And that you must achieve. All the plays are in him. All is in him. And he has made a choice. It's either life or theater. It's either life or being killed every night, murdered, slain, devoured, miserable, dedicated. And that's the life of the actor. It is not glamour, it is not money, it is serving the play and the public and giving everything to us. That is the thing.
I was going to be a stolid bourgeois lawyer. And then I decided to come to New York to finish my education and to get the law degree. I arrived in New York, I looked around me, and this was a time when New York was teeming with great teachers of acting: Stella Adler, Sandy Meisner, Robert Lewis, Harold Clurman, Lee Strasberg. The Actors Studio was flourishing, and many of the actors that we remember with great admiration were living in New York in those days, working in the theater at night, studying at night and in the daytime. And this was before the exodus to Los Angeles, when television moved out there for real estate reasons, and then the actors followed, of course. But at that time, it was the golden age of American acting education. I looked around me and I thought, well, if I'm going to continue to support my schooling, and my mother and me, she had moved to New York, and she was working, but still, I had to work. And if I'm going to earn a living at all in this, I'm going to have to compete, and it's a very, very fast track. And so I started looking around, and one day I walked into a room, and there was a woman, flamboyant, dyed blonde hair, stentorian voice, grand gestures, a grande dame, in short. Her name was Stella Adler. She talked to me for a while and asked why I wanted to study with her, and I told her that I had to earn a living and that I I wanted to do it as well as I could. I didn't like amateurism in anybody else, and certainly not in myself. And I would like to learn how to act, really learn how to act. And from everything I had read and heard, she was the teacher I would like to study with. She took me. I studied with her for 2.5 years. Her course was 2 years. She asked me to stay an additional 6 months and assist her when I finished the course. But about 6 months into it, it was full time. I woke up one morning, looked in the mirror and said, "Who the hell are you kidding? You don't want to be a lawyer. Never did want to be a lawyer. This is what you would like to do." And so it began. I embarked on nearly 12 years of full-time education. I studied 2.5 years with Stella Adler, 4 years with Harold Clurman, to whom she had been married. He was a founder of the group theater, and 2 years with Robert Lewis, also out of the group theater. I studied modern dance with Hanya Holm and Alvin Nicolai. I then went on to study classical ballet with Ella Deganova. I studied Cicchetti technique with her, and then Russian technique with Ben Harvey. It came upon me incrementally in all the disciplines that I studied in my life, the formal disciplines, the performance disciplines. She was the best teacher I ever had of anything. Better than any of my university teachers, better than any of the teachers I had worked with in liberal arts study and the study of the law. She was quite simply the most gifted teacher I ever met. She was inspiring. She was eccentric. Sometimes she was quite nutty. But at the core of it was this steely technique which she had acquired over many years, and which she had acquired, in fact, from Stanislavski himself. Now, there were two streams of the Stanislavski system, essentially, that came out of the group theater. The two streams exist today. They run parallel to each other, and in the end, they often cross and reach the same result. Stella was trained at the group theater principally by Lee Strasberg, who was its teacher and director. Harold Clurman was also running the group theater, as was Cheryl Crawford. In, I think, 1934, she went to Paris and discovered that Stanislavski was there for the summer. And she confronted him and said that his system, which she had been studying scrupulously since these members of the group theater had encountered the Moscow Art Theater when it came to New York in the 1920s, was driving her crazy. And Stanislavski listened to her complaints and agreed to teach her, which he did, I think, for something like a month or 6 weeks. He trained her in a role. And then she came back to New York. There were all of her colleagues at the group theater. This was a group, of course, that had changed everything in America. The group theater had brought the Stanislavski system into America, and they had changed the way actors act, the way writers write, the way directors direct, and they were becoming a dominant force, the dominant force, the theater and ultimately in film. They were waiting for her, and they said, "Well, what did the master have to say?" And she said, "He's abandoned emotional memory." Now, that may be meaningless to anybody listening to this, but to an actor it has some meaning. Emotional memory was what Uspinskaya taught when she remained behind from the Moscow Art Theater, and Strasberg and others were very influenced by it. It is what people sometimes think of as the Stanislavski system, in which one recalls one's own experiences that are similar to, maybe even identical to, the experiences of the character, and brings back from the core of one's being the experience. It isn't really what people think it is. It is more complex and more interesting than I have described it, because it isn't just vanishing from the world and remembering when the dog died and then opening one's eyes with tears. It's much more interesting and complicated than that, and it involves recalling occurrences in one's life which evoked emotions similar to the character's emotions, and then one reviews them, but not in the way the public might think, simply remembering what was the time of day. Was it night? Was it day? Was it outside? Was it inside? If it was inside, do you remember the room? Was the room warm, cold? Can you see the wallpaper? or the paint, refining and defining, and recalling in the most intimate detail the experience. Not necessarily aloud, but in one's own recollection, usually under the guidance of the director. And what happens is that when you reach a certain point in that exercise of affective memory, emotional memory, you begin to relive it so vividly that whatever emotions you had at the time come flooding back. Now, Stella argued that this took her away from the play, away from the character, away from what was happening in the play. She felt that it was an impediment. Many people would disagree with her. There are still actors who use emotional memory, affective memory, which was Lee Strasberg's emphasis, though not his total emphasis. He taught everything. Nevertheless, she felt that it impeded her. And he said, I don't use it anymore. Stanislavski said, for that very reason. Instead, I am interested in what the character wants at any given moment, in the given circumstances. You must be rooted in the play. Do not depart from the play. Don't cut yourself off from your partner in the scene or your partners. Don't go so deep in yourself that you no longer exist for your partner and for the character and for the play. You must, said Stanislavski and said Stella, you must be so thoroughly immersed in the given circumstances of the play, then you decide what it is at any given moment that the actor wants. When you try to achieve what that actor wants, as ardently as what that character wants, I should say, when you try to achieve it, the emotions will come. Just in the act of trying to achieve. If I'm trying to convince you that you must never, ever, ever speak to this person again, I'm going to try to persuade you. That's my action. I'm going to persuade you never to talk to this person. Look how already I'm more animated. And if it requires an even more powerful action, the animation is going to be complete. When Mark Rydell, the great director of On Golden Pond and other films, a member of the Actors Studio, a student of Stanford Meisner, he demonstrated for our students, who are master's degree candidates, after all. He said, look, I can demonstrate this very easily for you. I'm going to take you and put you in a closet. I'm going to lock that door from the outside. And I will say to you, your action is to get out of the closet. And I mean get out of that closet. You have 60 seconds. He said, well, you're going to begin to struggle to get out of that closet. But the locked door is the obstacle to the action, which a great playwright writes into every scene. He said, after 30 seconds, you're going to be emotional. By the time I release the door, you're going to be hysterical. Why? Did you try to remember some moment in your life when you were this emotional? No. You weren't thinking about that at all. All you were thinking about was getting out of that damn closet. That was Stella's emphasis. I'm not saying that either side is correct. As a matter of fact, I think the best possible technique unites the two. Because there are moments when one has problems with actually accessing the deep and difficult emotions of oneself, and an exercise, an emotional memory or an affective memory exercise can release it, can have a wonderful effect. But for the most part, I think Stella emphasized, if you know what you want, Alan Alder on our stage, who had studied this technique, said there should be a sign over the entrance to every stage. As the actor is about to go on stage, it says, what do you want? It gets more complicated than that. It's divided into beats, into moment-to-moment decisions about what the character wants, and an overall action that takes you through the whole play. But generally speaking, this is what Stella taught. And there are exercises that teach you to do it. It's not easy. It sounds much simpler than it is. When the two sides divided, so to speak, now they've come together again. But for decades, there was on the one side Strasberg and his disciples who emphasized emotional memory, but not exclusively. He's been maligned in that way. Stella Adler, Harold Clurman, Robert Lewis, Sanford Meisner, these were the great exponents of the later work of Stanislavski's life, the action, the objective, the super objective, which is that overall action that takes you through the play, and the devotion to given circumstances. Both sides emphasize concentration. You have to concentrate in a way that normal people don't. Look, with the work that you're going to do here, because these emotional memory exercises are also called sense memory, They are the memory of 5 senses, of our 5 senses. That's all we have. It will make you extremely sensitive. You're about to separate yourself from the rest of the world. There will come a point in your education at our school, at any good school, where you achieve what's called breakthrough, where for the first time you cross a barrier and it's the Rubicon, you can never go back again. You sense more than other people. You will see more, hear more, feel more, etc. than other people do. You will be sensitive to what? To the moment, to your partner, to your action, to your partner's action, which may conflict with yours, to the play in a way in which other people are not. All of these great teachers, Strasberg, Stella, Meisner, Lewis, Claremont, all of them, they emphasize listening. Now, you're listening to me, right? When you speak to me, I'm listening to you. In life, we listen to other people, listening with varying degrees of concentration and attention, right? Actors must learn to listen in a different way. Alan Alder, who really understands these things very well, I think, on our stage at Inside the Actors Studio, said the way to understand listening, the act and art of listening, is the following. If what you hear changes you in any way, you've heard it, you've listened. If it doesn't, and we listen all our time in our lives. We're listening to television, we're listening to our mates at dinner, we're listening to the traffic in the street, we listen. But this is a different kind of listening. This is a listening that is so acute, that is so focused and concentrated, that if the other person, the other actor, says, I have some very bad news for you. Your mother has died. It really hits. It's not a stage, it's not makeup, it's not scenery and costumes. Somebody has just told you that you the character, that the character's mother has died. And it doesn't have to be that big. It can be a small thing, but you are listening. I often ask our guests, we've had 250 of them in 16 years of Inside the Actors Studio and of our school. What's the single most important thing that you would tell an actor? Listen. Listen. But it's that particular kind of listening of which an actor becomes capable in time. It doesn't happen in a day. That and patience, and as Paul Newman said when he was the first guest of Inside the Actors Studio 16 years ago, and someone said, give me one word. Paul said, persistence. Persistence. And then he told a lie. He said, I was born an ordinary actor. I will die an ordinary actor. But I've persisted. Of course, that was the lie. Not that he persisted, but that he was ordinary. It was anything but.
I care about the rehearsals. I care about tearing down the script. I care about making terribly cerebral judgments about the directions in which a character may go. The actual performing, the actual getting up and having someone shout action and put a placard in front of you and then doing your job is very, very dull. All the preliminary things are interesting.
How extensive are the preliminaries?
Well, I think that varies on how close the part is to me. If the part is fairly close to me, or what I think of myself as a human being, then the preliminary work is minimal. If the part is a distance from me, then I hold up for a long while. The primitives basically need more work with me than the sophisticated people. Well, I hope that my roles are a little more diversified than that. Granted, they are contemporary and almost exclusively American. On those occasions when I've gone very far afield from that, it has not been with any great acclaim on the part of either the critics or the populace, and certainly an absolute disaster as far as the financial backers are concerned. So I don't know whether that peculiarly American stance that I take, and contemporary stance, is an act of wisdom or an act of fear. I suspect it's rather an act of wisdom. If you know your own limitations, I think you should be prepared to live with them. I'm not very good with the classics. I've never had a classical ear. I seem to be stuck inside of an American skin, like it or not. No, I'm doing what I like to do. There are some liabilities, but in the long run, it's been very good to me.
From the very beginning, there was such a sense of exploration, of lack of ego, of willingness to, jump off cliffs. And when you have that kind of feeling going in, it's pretty hard to make mistakes.
Do you think you'd get an Oscar for this?
That's not anything that I think very much about. It's been a long time, and it's like chasing a beautiful woman for 80 years, and she finally says, well, here I am. And you say, and so? Now what? So, I don't know. I guess I may have been competitive about acting at one point in my life. I'm certainly not competitive anymore.